Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Corona TV, the show that was born in a global pandemic, but not defined by it. This is a show about hope, positivity, and optimism. And if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing and business and PR and, the stuff we used to do before the pandemic hit. Well, this little segment is just to tell you about ways that you can interact with the show. Number one, you can comment. You can comment right now, and you'll see your comments most likely on the show. Number two, you can send a video response. And so if there's something that you really loved or hated on the show, post that video response to your Instagram story or an Instagram post and just tag Jaffe Juice TV, and hopefully I will play that on a subsequent episode. And then finally, we have an amazing Zoom after show, which begins as soon as this show ends. And it's an opportunity for you to actually join me and my guests and become kind of part of the show. So that begins, and you'll see the URL. I will put that up a little bit later, immediately after the show. So without further ado, let's get on with the show. Am I being overconfident? Am I becoming complacent about complacency?
I think you are.
Oh, he's not the Messiah. He's just a very naughty boy.
Yeah, I've got big ears.
Brian just wanted to see anyone. Piss off!
That's the one, because you literally complete me, and we complete each other.
You've obviously encountered discrimination in your own life by virtue of being Australian.
Hey, Manuel Camp was a real pissant who was very rarely stable.
I don't want to get too gushy, but I might just be saying you complete me, Dean. PNG now stands for Pritchard and Good.
Branding is not a bad blind date.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're
How
insane!
Did I do that?
You're insane!
Well, hello again, everyone. Hello to Tom Morris, who said, great to be anywhere, but especially here on Corona TV. And Mr. Chip Griffin is here. Good afternoon to you, sir, all the way from YouTube land. And you're going to try and derail me just like you were doing with Mr. Falls this morning. I love that. I love that little mischievous side to you, Chip. So we have, I guess, about 3 days before voting concludes for next year's South by Southwest. And as a reminder, if you want to see my session, which is how I reinvented myself during a global pandemic, you're actually part of the case study right now just by watching the show. All you got to do is go on over to panelpicker.southbysouthwest.com/vote/107100 and vote for me. And I will be sharing all of my secrets with you, the tips, the tools, the tricks. I want you to start your own show. Be a competitor to me. I don't care. The rising tide floats all boats. And that's the most important thing. Mr. Bob Farnham is here. Looks like another great episode. Well, of course it is, because Judi Glova is my guest today, and you're gonna, hear her and see her very, very shortly. Well, today it's actually National Unfriend Day, which was something started by Mr. Jimmy Kimmel. So it's a great opportunity to unfriend someone that's just been annoying you to no end. I don't think it should be a political unfriend. Because we need to have that perspective from the other side right now. But for someone who who really has been just irritating the crap out of you, this is an opportunity to unfriend them. Don't block them, just unfriend them, and tell Jimmy Kimmel that you're doing it because you saw this on Corona TV. Well, this week's interviews, Judi Glova is my guest today. And she is an expert in intuitive leadership, resilience, and high performance. But tomorrow, I just want to mention Alan Lichtman is going to be coming on. He created the 13 keys to the White House, and he has successfully predicted the outcome of every single election since 1982. And we're going to go through those 13 keys and find out how Donald Trump did Did he in fact correctly predict what happened, or maybe will happen, or should have happened, could have happened, didn't happen, maybe happened? You know what I mean. He'll be on the show tomorrow. But Judi is my guest today, and I'm just super excited to talk to her about shoulding and over responsibility. She's got this amazing perspective on leadership, and in particular leadership amongst high-performing women. Although hopefully her advice will apply to schmucks like me as well. Well, let's get into our seated soliloquy. And the seated soliloquy today is called crowd pleaser. It's called people pleaser. I'm trying to please the crowd myself. It's called people pleaser. In looking for a quote on people pleasing to quiz my guest today, I was intrigued to see certain patterns of people being quoted. Most notably, there seem to be three categories. So category one, the philosophers, led by captain of the team, Lao Tzu, and backed up by his starters, Aristotle and Aesop. Category one, I guess, was expected. I mean, you expect the Stoics, if I use that correctly, to come up with pearls of wisdom like, care about what other people think, and you will always be their prisoner, Lao Tzu. If you try to please all, you please none, Aesop. There is only one way to avoid criticism: do nothing, say nothing, and be nothing, Aristotle. Now, category two was also expected and was comprised of the authors. And I won't expand on this because this is the camp I actually selected my quote from, so I don't want to tip my hand any more than I already have. But category three was the real surprise for me. It was the celebrities, the actors, the singers. In this case, Viggo Mortensen, Jim Carrey, and Ed Sheeran. Here are some of the quotes. I can't tell you the key to success, but the key to failure is trying to please everyone. Ed Sheeran. If you're trying to please everyone, then you're not going to make anything that is honestly yours. I don't think, in the long run. Viggo Mortensen. And finally, Jim Carrey. Your need for acceptance can make you invisible in this world. Don't let anything stand in the way of the light that shines through this form. Risk being seen in all of your glory. Look, I'm no psychologist, although I do play one on Corona TV. But it struck me that celebrities are the consummate people pleasers who live their lives for others, who are desperate to be loved, accepted, and validated, who must conform to the image, perception, and often character that is formed in the hearts and minds of their audience or fans. That has to be exhausting and draining, completely thankless, and largely empty. Perhaps this is why in real life, we're often surprised and disappointed when we meet celebrities who are more often than not insecure and introverted and nothing like the role they play on stage or on screen. So spare a thought for those in the spotlight. And if you covet the spotlight, be careful what you wish for. And if it does come true, do your best to be the only self that means anything, yourself. Or something that I meant to do yesterday and then forgot to do was to look at some of the comments and be able to bring your comments in before I bring my guest. Bob Farnham says, I have nearly 700 friend requests pending approval. So I think you should accept a few so that you can unfriend them. Friend them and then unfriend them. Tom says, unfriend day with everyone complaining about Zoom fatigue and pandemic fatigue. I've only met moron fatigue. Time to unfriend. Hopefully he doesn't unfriend me. And I don't think he will because he likes the fact that I started with philosophers. So a little bit of, I'm being a people pleaser. I'm being a Tom Morris pleaser, I think. But now we can just get into some of the birthdays. Klaas Vierma, I may as well mention all of them in Facebook land. Philip Abramson, Leanne Berger Nathan, Jeremy Helfand, Lynn Bolger, and Rachel Parker, and a bunch more on LinkedIn. I won't mention all of them, but just to say happy birthday, Dragan, Eli, Maxim, and Hans Christian, not Hans Christian Andersen, but Hans Christian Hauschip. Exactly. That's what I meant to say. Well, now let's get to the woman of the hour, my VIP, my guest today, Judi Glova. For the past 16 years, Judi has been an intuitive expert, leadership trainer, executive coach, helping professionals expand their power, confidence, and influence where they need it most, from the inside out, and especially when they're under pressure. Who isn't these days? Plus, as a recovering, over-responsible, type A-driven, allergic to asking for help achiever, and those are all hyphenated, Judi knows it takes courage to go against the grain, trust your gut, and know when to ask others when you need support. She's all about empowering leaders to set and keep boundaries, to bounce back with resilience when business or life throws curveballs, and what it takes to harness authentic power where it hides. So without further ado, let's bring her onto the show. Welcome, Judi.
Hi, how are you? I'm so honored to be here. Thank you, Joseph.
It's so good to have you here. And do you like what is this? Is this a lotus? Is this a lotus flower behind me?
Yeah, it is. It's a lotus, and it's also a symbol of, just your inner leadership, right? Like how you can bring out the best of who you are. So yeah, it's a symbol of leadership, as well as, how we can blossom into being the best of what we are.
Well, I feel like I'm blossoming already, just having your energy and your enthusiasm, your optimism with us today. So I have to ask you a question before we even get started. Sure. I noticed on your LinkedIn profile, and I've always been wondering what the hell lion means. I know iron like a lion in Zion. I know that, but what is it to be a lion? What does lion stand for?
It's LinkedIn Open Networker. So I believe that, in being open with who I connect with, it's not always people that I know, but it's, I'm open to networking with people all around the world. It's kind of like that 6 degrees of separation, kind of making it a little shorter. But yeah, that's what it means. LinkedIn Open Networker, lion. Her.
So for me, can I just be a lion? Can I just put lion next to my name, or do I have to be certified?
No, you don't have to be
Liony.
certified. No, you don't have to be certified. Well, you could be certifiable, but no, it just, you certify yourself. It's self certification. Yeah.
I've got a new one. I've got a new one that I'm going to actually add to my name, which is DTN, down to network.
I love that.
Not the other one, but down to network. So Chris LaGrange is here, and he said, "Hi, Judi, you're awesome." So that's great. Thanks for sharing, Chris. This is a show that is all about that hope, that positivity, that optimism. It's been missing, I feel, for a while. And sometimes you just have a topic that's serious, and we're going to be discussing some serious topics as well. But I think with the energy of being able to, come out on the other side, see the light, be the light, feel the light, and share the light as well.
Absolutely.
So Judi, some fun facts about you. There are some interesting fun facts about you. Turns out that you're actually not a Californian girl at all, that you come from maybe my neck of the woods, and I'm not talking about South Africa. I'm talking about good old New Jersey. So you've lived in California for almost 11 years. But when you're feeling homesick, you have your family and friends send you New Jersey thin crust pepperoni pizza and homemade pierogies.
Yes, it's a must. Because, you miss Jersey. You got to have it.
Well, I mean, one thing about Jersey is they say you can take the woman out of Jersey, but you can't take Jersey out the girl, right?
Exactly.
So there you are. Who had any idea that you were actually on the original cast of Jersey Shore? No one knew. No one knew.
No one knew. It's a secret. Now secret's out, though, Joseph. You just told everybody.
Well, another thing that you did is you actually, now that you've settled in California, you took lessons on the flying trapeze at the Santa Monica Pier. And before you even comment on that, let's show people what we're talking about. And I stopped it before you fell off the I'm kidding, that didn't happen. That's amazing. How did that feel, that moment of letting go?
Yeah, well, exactly. And that's exactly why I did it, because I, as I said, I'm a recovering control freak, right? So in committing to doing 10 lessons on the flying trapeze, I committed to, really let go of what the concepts that I had about myself, because I was, over 40, I was overweight at the time. I also just I didn't think I was strong enough. And I also realized that, as being an executive coach, I force my clients to go outside their comfort zone all the time. So it was like, what do I need to do? Because I'm actually a little bit of a learning junkie, but I wasn't pushing myself to be uncomfortable. That was uncomfortable, not because I was afraid of heights, but because I was afraid of letting go, of just being, present. And I have to say, there were times that I would pull up to the parking garage that's across the street, and I would sit there and I would text my friends and be like, I'm going to go to another class. It's like, please, support me. And it's like, it's important to know what your inner leadership is. And that's exactly what it taught me. It said, you know what, I know that I can teach people leadership, but it's not about doing leadership. It's about being a leader. How do you actually get into the inner core of who you are? And that's what I really learned, what's on the inside. What has to happen for you to have, that clarity, for you to own your strength, to have the resilience that when you do screw up, and I have stories about when I screwed up, and, being able to elevate your game, not just being, accepting where you are, but, even being open to doing more. Because I thought I would get to one trick in those 10 classes. I had my sights very low, but I ended up doing 3 or 4 different tricks. It was awesome.
I mean, it also comes down to the fact that there's obviously the 10,000 hour approach, that says if you want to really get great at something, but then there's another thing that says that you can achieve anything that you set your mind to. Anything. I mean, is that true? Are there some things that we just can't achieve, or do you believe that we really can do anything in this world?
Well, I was actually reading something the other day about this, and I think that it's your perception of we can do anything. It's whether or not you have the expectation of being perfect, right? I would rather live my life feeling as though I can do anything. I can try anything. I can put myself in an experience of anything. It doesn't mean I'm going to do it great. I'm going to be an excel at it, but at least I'm going to have the opportunity of enjoying it and stepping into it. So that's more or less of where I come from. And yeah, so I'm on the side of, if you really want to do something, you can. Whether you want to do it at an expert level, maybe not. But what's your, it's almost like, what's your intention? What do you want to get out of it? What does success look like, right?
Well, it's so important, because there are 2 elements of, obviously. One is what is perfection anyway, right? Perfection in whose eyes, right? In whose mind? And I think that's where we can be so hard on ourselves, where it's not even other people setting a bar, it's our own bar, and disappointing ourselves constantly, and therefore shying away from, attempting to kind of do that high jump, if you will, using that analogy.
Oh yeah, I mean, being a perfectionist and expecting and how we set standards for ourselves. Like I do think that having I've had high standards for myself, and there's been times when it's served me and there's been times when it's led me down the path of having burnout. So I think it's really a self-regulation, and it's having self-awareness of knowing when those high standards are working for you and when they're working against you. And I think in some areas you can think about the symptoms of when they're not working for you is when you are slipping into people pleasing, which I know you opened the show with. We can step into always having to be, accepted or wanting approval. That can definitely put us in that place of, perfectionism or wanting control, wanting, security, or wanting, what's the other famous want? Wanting separation, wanting to be unique, wanting to be special, right? That can be a perfectionism. So there's a lot of wants that we have that get us tripped up. And those are probably 4 of the 5 that I know of the wants that can get in the way when it comes to perfectionism.
One of the things that you do, which I really love, is we have the same approach where we talk about superpowers.
Yes.
And then I know you add the concept of nemesis or kryptonite to that.
Kryptonite.
But I think one of the newest superpowers that certainly come out through Corona TV is this idea of self-deprecation. And even for brands, even for corporations, but this idea of just not only not taking yourself so seriously and having that intensity, that A-type intensity, that always on, I've always got to perform, I've always got to outperform, but actually even being able to laugh at yourself and kind of enjoy that moment when you demonstrate, guess what? You are flawed, you aren't perfect, you're just like everybody else.
Right.
What do you think about that concept of self-deprecation as a superpower?
Yeah, well, I actually phrase it in a different way. I call it authenticity, right? Or vulnerability. And Brene Brown is a big, huge, she's a super author about that topic. And, when we talk about authenticity, why don't we be the truth of who we are? When we're able to, one of my favorite quotes is, let go and rise. When we let go, we rise. And when you let go of that exterior of being perfect, of having to show up all shiny and, wonderful, you then get to let people see who you are. And connection is currency. That's the other point that I would make is connection is currency, and people can connect to you when you're authentic, when you don't have that, shiny veneer and you don't have to be perfect. I mean, living in LA, I see perfect all the time. There's a lot of it, especially in my neighborhood. But it's
is that plastic perfection or what kind of perfection is it?
Well, yeah, some of it's plastic in all forms, and some of it is, I'm
referring to the men. I'm referring to the men, by the way. But let me ask you a serious question, which is this tendency that we're talking about, this strive to be perfect. I'm asking almost a leading question because I think I know the answer. Is it more prevalent amongst women compared to men? And if so, why?
Yeah, it's definitely more prevalent in women. But I have to say my male clients have it too, but in a different way. And women have this internal voice that we want to be the ideal woman. Right? Who's the ideal woman? We see her in magazines and, thank God that's changing, but there's the ideal woman, and that's who we strive to look like. And that's our inner voice. That's our inner critic that's constantly talking. And from what I've heard, men have a similar voice, but it's called the better man. If I was the better man. So men have it, it's just a little different. And I can also say, I've trained thousands of leaders around the world. And when I do leadership training courses, I will have men in the room telling us about how they have these loud inner critic voices. So while I think it's more, the people pleasing stuff comes from women, I think there's a lot of that internal critic stuff that comes from men because sometimes it is what makes us great. It gets us to strive to be better, but at a certain point in your career, it no longer works. It's no longer what is going to get you to the next level, because if you're constantly beating yourself up, it works against you, right?
So Illuminated Leaders Abigail Rebecca says, Judi is so awesome. Looking forward to this interview, and I have to agree. And she adds, yes, 100% enjoying the learning and not being afraid to fail. Now, June Deschino, who may or may not be my auntie in Rome, said some consider perfectionism a vice. And Tom adds, I don't mind it at all considering perfectionism a vice, since now there will be one I won't ever fall into.
Awesome.
What do you think? Do you think it's a vice, or do you think it's how do you frame this concept of perfectionism? And I think it's a good segue to get into this idea of your thinking around over responsibility.
Right. So I'm even going to link it to superpowers and kryptonite. So
awesome.
Yeah. So
one-stop thought leadership. I love it.
So here's the thing. As leaders, we all have superpowers and we have to own them. And if your superpower is that perfectionism, is that strive for wanting, the best, if you overuse any superpower, it becomes your kryptonite. It's true for anything. It's true for even, I've had leaders that are amazing at being striver drivers. Well, if you are that amazing striver driver, it can if you don't temper that as you go higher and higher up the food chain at work, it can definitely make your team feel, kind of left out. Right? If you're the one that's constantly doing everything and they don't get to, stand in the sunshine. So you have to think about every superpower that you have, own it, but you have to know when to use it. And as you go higher up in, like I said, in success, you have to be able to modulate it. And it's the finesse of how you do that. And to the point of, our topic of talking about over responsibility, so many leaders that I deal with, their problem is not success. That's not their problem. They don't come to me because they want to be more successful. They usually come to me because they're like, oh my gosh, if I do one more thing, I'm going to break, or I'm going to be, I'm going to have burnout, or, there's something else that's not working. That's a symptom for their over responsibility. So they don't come to me saying, oh, Judi, I got to work on my over responsibility. They usually come to me with these other reasons as to why, they're feeling this lack of effectiveness. So the over responsibility is people pleasing. It's perfectionism. It can come up with that hero mindset of like, I've got to have all the answers on my shoulders. And we do that in a way, we're not authentic. We're being that we're trying to do leadership as opposed to being a leader, showing up as, the truth of who we are.
There's something that's very, I would say, congruous with what you said about overusing or overusing a superpower, that it becomes actually a kryptonite. One of the things that I've experimented with quite extensively is archetypes with respect to the Jungian archetypes, the 12 archetypes, and using it for brand building and brand workshops. And one of the things that comes through in this is that every one of these archetypes has a dark side. And it's amazing how you've just got to, like, for example, the magician. Well, the magician can become a sorcerer or engage in the dark arts if they move over too much to an extreme. So I definitely can attest to that. Rini Huey-Lipton, who past guest on the show, said, I often say one of my superpowers is asking the unasked question, and I really have to read the room before I do that, or it can get ugly. So that's maybe a classic example, which is, I guess, if she was always having to feel or forcing herself to ask that question, it might be the wrong time, or it might be the wrong question,
Oh,
or the wrong room.
Awesome. And actually, I've had clients that they were women who would ask questions in meetings, and they were getting feedback that they weren't really effective. And when I did a 360, which is, I kind of asked around, like, okay, so tell me, what is this person doing well and what are they not doing well at all? And it was this thing of, she would never state her purpose, or she would never make a claim or make a firm statement, but it was always asked in a question. And for women, there's actually studies too that have shown that women that ask too many questions are seen as wishy-washy, that they don't own their power. So it's really interesting that, yeah, I do think that asking good questions is amazing superpower, and reading the room is 100% spot on. It's emotional intelligence. You got to have it, and you got to use it for sure.
Is also the part of asking too many questions almost coming from a position of not over responsibility, but this idea of not wanting to be too dominant, not wanting to be too overconfident. So you ask a question because the implication is, hey, I don't really know the answer. What do you think? When the reality is they probably do know the answer, but they're trying to be more inclusive, more inviting. And so how would you answer that? Would you just make a statement then, as opposed to ask the question?
Yeah, I mean, people can sniff it out. Like when you know the answer and you're just asking a bunch of leading questions, like they're just
true.
Like, coming from Jersey, seriously, we can smell it a mile away. So it's like people know. So when you overuse it, it really is like, give them the benefit of the doubt of saying, yeah, we all know that, this is my opinion, or this is where I'm coming from, or literally asking an open-ended question that's not leading. And if you're really curious.
Rini says, yes, I often frame the question as what if, as in, what if you didn't stop asking such stupid questions? Not Rini, but Rini asking that to the other people in the room. Because I know Rini, and Rini never asks stupid questions. I want to just go back and just touch for just briefly before moving onto this idea of over responsibility, because I'd just like you to just go maybe one level deeper. This ability, someone who is who practices over responsibility, someone who can't delegate, who doesn't want to let somebody else do it, as in, I'll just do it myself. Don't worry about it. Just forget about it. I'll do it myself. Is that what it is?
Yeah, and I'll give you an example. So I have a client in Silicon Valley. She's a CEO of it's not a startup. I mean, they've been around for about 5 years now. And, we were working together, and literally she was just practically in tears one day because she was just so exhausted. And yet she had a full team. And it was like, you know what, we had this conversation, and, I asked her, I said, what's your typical day like? And she's like, well, they come into my office, and this was pre-COVID, by the way. She's like, they come into my office and they ask me to do things. And it's like, yeah, I can do it 1, 2, 3. So she just jumps in and she's like, I know I can do it faster, and I can just get it done. I can make one phone call and boom, it's done. But yet then, she's like, I don't get anything done, and I have to end up staying late getting all of the other stuff done. And I'm like, you know what? I said, so what I'm hearing you say is, you're allowing people to kind of take a dump on you all day. It's like they're dumping on you all day long. And she said, yeah. And, her it was funny because her dog she was just got a new dog, and her dog was barking in the background. And I said, oh, you got a new puppy? And she said, yeah. And I go, okay, well, do you let your dog poop in your shoes? And she's like, no. And I'm like, well, why do you let people come in and take a dump on you all day long? I'm like, there has to be some boundaries. There has to be an ability to say, this is not for me. And I think the biggest switch for leaders to fix that is to train yourself how to help them think. So instead of us doing all the thinking for the people that work for us, create thinkers, create people who can solve problems and solve their own problems, as opposed to solving all of them for them. Because that way you empower more leaders. You're allowing them to dig into their inner leadership, right? Ask them, so what do you think would be the first thing? What if you took the first step? What would it be? And having a conversation to pull it out of them as opposed to always giving. So going back to people pleasing, it's like giving, giving, giving. You know, there has to be an exchange. To be a leader, there's also this give and take. I need to be able to give. I need to be able to take. And, you know, if you're not doing any of the taking, that's imbalanced.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of taking, and some people, it is the corollary to over responsibility, which is accepting help is a form of taking. Being selfish is a form of taking. I always say that there's good kinds of selfish, and then there are bad kinds of selfish, and we always associate the word selfish with a negative. But sometimes selfish is taking the time for yourself. You know, the analogy when the mask, you know, when the mask falls in a plane. Remember those? You know, the advice is always put it on yourself before, you know, putting it on others. And I think we need to be, I think, as leaders, not just delegating, but being more selfish leaders, but the good kind of selfish.
Right. And I subscribe to that too. And I think selfish can also be, if you do it all yourself, you're robbing the opportunity for somebody else to step up and for them to learn. Because chances are, whenever I ask leaders, like, you know, who is the best boss that you had? And generally, it's the boss that let them fail, that let them kind of learn on their own, or made them have to work the extra hours that they had to stretch. So, you know, I think that there is an element of learning about selfishness, and when you look at the root cause of over responsibility, there's a lot of, you know, feelings that we stuff. And I like to talk about the ball of emotions, right? We all have this ball of emotions, and we tend to suppress them, right? So it's the feeling, oh, it's backwards here. It's the feelings of fear and worry. You know, it's making sure that we're perfect. And if you think about it, we suppress so many things, the judgments and the conclusions that we've made about ourselves. And this takes a lot of effort. If you've ever been in a swimming pool and tried to, you know, keep a ball underwater, and what happens eventually when you're trying to hold a ball underwater, right?
Pops it up and breaks your nose.
Right, pops it up and puts you in the nose, right? So the thing is that we have to recognize that what are we holding down? What are we trying to suppress when we're running for over responsibility or perfectionism or being a hero, or, you know, any of those things? We're suppressing our own feelings, and it doesn't work. It backfires on us eventually. And it's learning how to let go. Again, when we let go, we rise. When we let go of those limiting beliefs, when we let go of what we think we have to be, and we can be more authentic.
Well, you said something that I think needs to be restated, which is when the good kind of selfish becomes the bad kind of selfish. But in this case, I think the way you said it is when you do it for yourself. When you struggle to let go in this particular case, you're actually being the bad kind of selfish, because you're not, it's two parts, right? One is you're not allowing the other side to fail. And two is you're not allowing the other side to succeed. So you're almost kind of making them impotent, because they're unable to do anything and therefore to grow. And this comes from the leader that had good intentions, which is, I'm going to do it. I'm going to struggle to let go. So I just think that that's a really, really powerful thought.
Excellent. Yeah, brilliant. You said it perfectly. And yeah, it's a bifurcated part of selfishness on the bad side, because yeah, the intention, all of our intentions are good generally. For the most part, what I find is that most leaders' intentions are good, but it's the action, it's the impact that you have to be aware of. And if you're aligned with, you have that inner and outer alignment, you're in authenticity, you're much less likely to run into that problem of having that negative selfishness, because you're in that role of giving. You're being that servant leader, but you're also able to have the give and take.
I almost feel this could be like, this could be like marriage counseling or couples therapy, because it's something, as a man sometimes that I realize you always say, well, I didn't intend, my intent was not, well, screw your intent. It's your actions and the execution of that intent that really creates the impact in that, positive or negative. So, I think checks in the mail, Judi.
Well, I actually have to say a lot of what I learn and a lot of what I read other than leadership books is relationship books. Because if connection is currency, and currency meaning, the currency of opportunity, the currency of making money, any currency is connection. How do we build those connections? It's with our relationships. And how do we deal with each other? And how do we let go of what's no longer serving, and how can we be that authentic person and understand and take the time, right, to slow down and understand what our intentions are and how we're impacting others. And I would say the other thing with being a great leader is also being able to give good feedback, of being able to teach people how to give feedback and to accept feedback.
I want to ask you. I want to ask you a completely. I'm staying on this lateral tangent, which is, in your experience counseling so many leaders, how I would say, how consistent is the relationship that they have with their partner or spouse, with the kind of leader they are and the relationships they have in the workplace from a professional sense?
I'd have to say the ones that I have seen that are like master leaders, they tend to have really good marriages. They do. I mean, if I'm honest, the ones that are really great, I mean, they're great communicators, they're authentic, they care, they have a give and take. A few of them are popping into my mind right now, and they have awesome, relationships. But I also know a couple, I also do know a couple entrepreneurs that are super successful and also have that inner satisfaction, but there's fewer. And I think the reason for that is because they have a sense of spirituality. Like, they're also not the typical entrepreneur, they have this real connection with their spiritual sense of who they are on the inside. And it's not just about what's on the outside. And they're driven by a sense of purpose. Like, their purpose is so strong and they truly know themselves. And they're actually single. So, is their relationship with themselves good? I would say yes. So
yeah, and that comes back to that idea of, as you call it, inner leadership. Well, this is a good segue for me to give two calls to action for you instead of right at the end of the show. One is, well, actually three. We'll come back to that one. Let's go with this one first. You have a monthly release and recharge support call, which I think is kind of an awesome concept. So are these one-on-ones or are they like group calls?
It's actually a group call. And what we do is we work through a particular thought process. Let's say you have a limiting a belief about perfectionism, right? So actually on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing one of our monthly calls. And what we do is we experience what it's like to actually go through the Sedona method. It's based on the Sedona method, and we let go of the 3 hooks that hold on to a particular limiting behavior or habit. And yeah, we do it as a group. And it's one of the best leadership skills that I've been able to give people. So yeah, it's a great.
You also have a quest. I feel this is very like the lotus flower is opening. I'm making my way to Peru, and a little insider joke between us. But you have what you call the effortless outcomes quest: 21 days to inner peace and prosperity.
Right.
And in reading the description, you're talking about things like meditation and sleep. Mm-hmm. I wonder if you could talk very briefly to that, because I think people are struggling with sleep at the moment during these really challenging times.
Yeah, so the Effortless Outcomes Quest is basically, we have 21 days and we create a daily practice for you, because when you're able to give yourself, and it's 10 minutes, literally, it's so powerful. It's only 10 minutes a day. You get into a pattern. Every day you get a video, you get a 3-minute meditation that you're doing, and it literally helps you align your energy so that you're focused, you sleep better, you let go of a lot more stress. And I teach you every single day, there's a lesson in the 1-minute video. It's either 1 or 2-minute videos. And basically you can walk through all 21 days learning something about how to be more aligned, how to get more clarity, and also how to let go, how to elevate. So every week has a theme, and we walk you through the process, and it is magical. I'm just finishing the first round. I just did it once, and people are really enjoying it. They're saying they get more clarity, they're sleeping better at night, and they're doing things in a more effortless way. They're not being so hard on themselves. They're giving themselves 10 minutes a day, and it does wonders.
Forgiveness is so important now more than ever. So let's segue into something else that, and I love these concepts, and I love the way that you express them. So you spoke about this idea of shoulding, and you said people. By the way, who would have ever thought we would have been speaking about poop, dumping on people, taking a dump on someone? And then when I read this, it says people shoulding on themselves. I'm thinking maybe you're referring to people shitting on themselves, but you said this makes your flesh crawl and your eyes twitch and you might even gag. So
yeah,
this is the kind of wiki definition of shoulding, and an article that I found about shoulding yourself to death. This idea of the cognitive distortion of making statements of what should be true as opposed to reality. Is that your definition, or how do you define shoulding?
Yeah, I mean, shoulding on yourself is that inner critic is constantly telling you that you're not enough. And it's one of the most common human messages that we give ourselves, is that we don't have enough, we don't do enough, and we aren't being enough. And when we talk about letting go, so I talk about the monthly support calls, our issues are like tissues. So if we can let go of shoulding on ourselves, right? If each one of these tissues is how we should on ourselves, wouldn't it be awesome? Wouldn't you feel more free and more effective if you could let go of those, right? And whenever you let go of something, right? Let's say you use a tissue, do you ever stick it back in the box? Like, no, right?
And if I did, I wouldn't admit to it on Corona TV.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I wouldn't do that because it's gross. But seriously, it's the whole package of how do we let go? How do we notice what we're shoulding on ourselves about? And then how do we let go of it and be able to do it in a way that supports you as a leader from the inside out, so that you can be truly authentic and at your best?
I think that there's such a really strong common theme today about being able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, God damn it, I'm incredibly good looking. Oh, sorry, but I digress. No, but I'm good enough. I'm good enough. And I can do this. I can do this no matter what life throws at me. No matter because I would imagine like our lives have been so changed now. Instead of dealing with that passive aggressive boss or all these workplace dynamics, now we're living in this isolation, and we still have to mentally, prop ourselves up and feed ourselves spiritually to have that confidence to face the Zoom day.
Oh, you're not kidding. So when it comes to the Corona experience, especially virtual leaders, there's a whole different symptoms of over responsibility. And a lot of it is suffering in silence, because we're alone in our homes a lot. So we suffer in silence, or, you do have that I'm going to take it all on my shoulders and I'm going to try to figure it out. And I'm going to mind read. I'm going to try to read the minds of my team instead of actually asking them. Right? Or it's like, I have to make up, how am I going to know if they're being productive or not? Or what are my blind spots? So in some ways, the the whole pandemic has exacerbated people in terms of how they get into over responsibility. They think they have to do everything themselves and it becomes all on them, when you really need to shift and think of three things as a leader. Am I creating clear direction? Do I have alignment? And do we have commitment? So in the Corona environment, we have to shift to be different kind of leaders, more powerful and intentional leaders, because otherwise you will have that over responsibility. It will be your kryptonite and your team will blame you and resent you. So it's really important to look at those three things.
Or put differently, shift happens. Just to continue our theme. Steve Garfield says the basis for my relationship is that we never say you should have to the other person, because that's in the past and there's nothing you can do about it.
Love it.
And that was the other interpretation of shoulding, which is the almost pejorative or patronizing. It's quite mean. It's actually quite mean, telling people what they did wrong, and to Steve's point, regardless of what they did, can't be changed.
Oh, yeah, no, I think I just don't see a purpose ever for telling somebody you should do something, because again, it kind of goes back to your own inner leadership. You have an inner knowing, and I love leaders who trust themselves, and you teach other people how to trust themselves by trusting their intuition. And that's, put it this way, that's the kind of leader that I love to work with, that I like to build and help them build. And I don't actually like to follow leaders that don't trust themselves. So by shoulding, even on children, when you should on children, it actually, it breaks down their sense of self and their sense of confidence. So if you want to gain more confidence and courage within yourself, stop the shoulding on yourself and stop allowing other people to should on you, because it's not good. It's messy.
I'm going to stop shoulding on myself. I'm going to stop shoulding on others. And if I do, I'm going to clean it up with those issue tissues.
Yes. Awesome.
I'm paying attention big time.
You are.
Let's touch very briefly before we wind up on this idea of gut. I've always believed that if I have a superpower in business, it is the fact that I trust my gut with my life. And I don't know why. It's just an instinct. It's the first thing I think of, and it's almost always right. And the more I think about it, the more I start to second guess and doubt myself. And it's almost like that trapeze, which is just the ability to close your eyes and go for it. How should people start to trust? How can you build stronger guts and stronger internal trust mechanisms with your gut?
Okay, so I would say it doesn't always show up as a gut reaction for everybody. Some people, it's like goosebumps, or they get something on the back of their neck, like the hair on the back of their neck stands up. But it's your body wisdom. And going back to your point of, when you hear something and you have to make a decision, like you automatically get your first thought, truly your intuition works faster. It's like 1,000 times faster than your logical mind. It takes you longer, but that's why once you get that intuitive hit, then when your logical mind comes back in, that's where the doubt is, because your ego starts saying, no, you can't. It starts judging yes or no, right or wrong. And it goes, yes, yes, hell no. So that's your ego. But your intuition will give you an instant, and it's quick and it's quiet, and it's literally being aware of it. It's having more self-awareness. So some of the ways that I actually encourage my clients to get more aware of it is to literally write something down or send themselves a text message every time that they have some kind of intuitive hit, like, oh, I felt like I should have said yes to that, or oh, I got this message, or I just got this feeling like I should have done something, or I should have said something, and kind of track it. And if you track it for just like 2 days, you can actually see a pattern. You can start being more aware of what is your sign. How do you get it? Because sometimes I get it as like little like messages when I'm meditating in the morning. sometimes I just get this idea of like, oh, why don't you send so-and-so a message? And I do it. Like yesterday, I literally, I got this message in my meditation that I needed to get, I needed to take my dog to the vet. And I was like, I don't feel like doing it. And then I realized I'm going to be traveling with her and she needs it. And literally it said on a piece of paper that it had to be within 30 days. So I was like, oh my gosh, if I'm going to be going somewhere at Christmas time, I need to make sure those shots are done. But I literally, it wasn't in my consciousness, but it was something intuitively that guided me. And it's those little tiny things that you start to trust yourself. It's the little things, and they start to add up, and you start proving it to yourself as you continue to notice it and acknowledge it.
I mean, Tom said the gut is the tug, and that's blowing my mind right this moment. It's blowing my mind too. I think that was, it's gold, Jerry. It's gold. That was gold. That was absolutely gold. All right, so I promised you in the seated soliloquy that you had a quote, and I almost forgot. I've been enjoying myself so much that I forgot to give you your quote. So this is your quote. When you say yes to others, make sure you aren't saying no to yourself. And I think that also speaks into the pleasing others maybe at the expense of yourself. So any idea who said that? It's an author.
It's an author?
This is in category 2, which is the authors.
Oh, I don't know.
Paulo Coelho. Right, Brazilian lyricist and novelist, best known for his novel, The Alchemist.
The Alchemist. I've read his book. I love it. Yeah, he's awesome.
Isn't that great? So that was your quote. Now, after your quote, we move to another fan favorite, and even if it isn't a fan favorite, it's my favorite, and I hope fans will like it, which is the Corona question. So all week this week, I'm asking my guests this question. What's the best advice you ever received?
The best advice was I was actually moving from New Jersey to California, and I had an offer on my house. And my teacher said, is your life or is your price your price? And that was like the best advice I ever got. And it was advice that allowed me to make my own decision and trust my own intuition. That's why I loved it the most, is because it was advice, but I was the one that was coming up with the answer. But yeah, my life is my life.
Is your life your life, or is your price your price? Right. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And there's one more little call to action for you, which I flashed a little bit earlier, which is you do intuitive leadership archetypes. And you can actually go to this URL, to bit.ly/intuitive leadership style, and take the assessment. I have to tell you that I took the assessment just before the show began. I had no idea that it was for women, but that's okay. It's
okay, it applies.
Well, so take a guess. Do you think that I would be a yes woman, a fulfillment seeker, a controlista, a lone rangerette, or a freedom fantasizer?
Lone Ranger. I'm guessing Lone Ranger.
And survey says I'm a lone rangerette. Poor lonely me. But thankfully I have you, Judi, and I have all the people in Corona TV land.
And now I know so much more about you. Now that I know.
You know way too much about me, but it's all good. If you want to connect with Judi Glova on the Instagram, Judi_Glova on the Twitter. You can find out more about her at judiglova.com. And of course, there you're going to be able to do all of these wonderful things. Sign up for the quest, take the quest, the vision quest, find out what archetype you are, male or female. Sign up for those monthly release and recharge support calls. Sounds absolutely awesome. Anything else you want to mention before we head on over to the Zoom after show?
Oh my gosh, just that this has been the most amazing conversation, and you are the best host ever. Gosh, you totally get it.
You see, I'm not the best host. I am just a mirror for the best guests.
Very well said, but kudos to you. Received.
Did the New Jersey go and you sniff a little bit of shoulding there? I don't know.
No, I think you can own that.
You're
pretty awesome.
I will work at getting better at that. This has been such fun, and I'm so thrilled. I have to thank Mr. David Libby, who watches the show and who recommended you. I love it when I get a guest through someone who watches the show. And I'll tell you why, because first of all, I trust people that watch the show implicitly. But more importantly, I think they know the show and they know me and they know what the show is about. So, do you know how extensively I qualified you when he recommended you? I trusted my gut. I trusted him and I trusted my gut and I trusted Chuck Norris, who said,
You are Chuck Norris approved.
Woo!
We'll be back tomorrow. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at CoronaTV.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.